What's up, everyone? In this video, we're going to talk about why the stock market got demolished today. It was actually the Dow's worst day in 3 months. So it was a bloodbath today. And looking at the heat map of the S&P 500, basically all stocks were in the red, all industries were in the red, and there was just a ton of selling pressure. So like I said in today's video, we're going to explain why this is happening, the most important things you need to know, and towards the end of today's video, we have a $15 million trade for you to know about. It's a big one, so make sure to stick with us. But Tom, let's get right into it.
Yeah, Mike, today was not good for multiple reasons, and the S&P 500 took a huge dump this morning to the downside. So looking at the economic calendar, we actually did get some negative retail sales this morning, which actually helped push the market down following Powell from yesterday. And then that selling pressure really continued and pushed us lower because, as we all know, retail sales play a lot into consumer spending, and it shows that if these are a lot lower, it shows that consumers are getting hurt by inflation a little bit more. So that is not good for the market, obviously, especially coming off of Powell making the market drop yesterday. And what I noticed, Mike, is there is a lot of key channels and levels on the SPY that we're starting to break. I know you talked about a lot of these earlier today in your intraday video, but man, we have bounced off in this channel like 4, 5, or like 6 times on the way up here. And we just had a big jump back to the downside, a big break right below. So watch out, guys. I feel like the SPY might go on at least a short-term downtrend here. And whenever I look at the daily chart, Mike, it's also bouncing off of that humongous trend line that we've been falling off of ever since the beginning of 2022. So pretty crazy to see this continuing to hold up, and not the type of movement that we want on a day following Powell speaking, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Tom, to be honest, what's really concerning is, we know that some of these big tech stocks like Apple, Amazon, Tesla, and Microsoft really lead the market. They have the heaviest weightings in the entire S&P 500. And when we look at Apple, which is like the leader, even that is just tanking in a major, major way. Apple is down nearly 5% today alone, and that's just brutal. Like we could see on average when Apple does fall, it's normally by only like 1.69%. So to see like a almost 5% drop in a day, that's pretty big, and it's definitely concerning because if Apple keeps tanking, the market will probably follow it.
Yeah, it really will. And Mike, I'm glad you brought Apple up again because I wanted to go back to the heat map actually, because this is actually one of the bloodiest heat maps I think I've seen in a long, long time. I will say Tesla was actually green, which is interesting, but they've been kind of inversing the SPY the past week. But looking at the market overall, I mean, this is just terrible. Microsoft 3%, Google 4.4%, Apple 4.69%, Nvidia down 4%. Even the banks like JP Morgan, Bank of America, Netflix was down 8%. Roblox actually fell 15% with some pretty bad news coming out. They actually released a November report that showed some pretty bad numbers for them. So they ended up down 15%, but just all across the board, Mike, we saw selling pressure, and we saw those big companies continue to push the market even lower. And like whenever I go to like the daily chart of Apple, Mike, Apple has been in like another huge setup, just like the overall market. And we are also testing the very bottom of this trend line with Apple again. So if we start to break out of that, I mean, it could get even more bloody. And we fell below that big 140 support today. I mean, it's just the market's not setting up well right now. And a lot of people are scared of recessions and everything like that coming in. Obviously, Powell says things like soft landings could be possible, and he does make a lot of good statements whenever he speaks. But overall, the inflation rate being as high as it is, Mike, is just not good to see. And we're just seeing so many bad reports about recessions and the market falling. And man, it's starting to get pretty bloody. And I think it's starting to bring a lot of fear into a lot of traders.
Yeah, like the market's at an interesting point in the sense where like there's not any like great news coming out, but at the same time there's not any like absolutely horrible news either. I will say over the past couple days, the news has been bearish though. Obviously that retail sales data that we got this morning wasn't that good. And then as we have a lot of stocks, just at support and just falling so much. And, we have like a lot of rejections overall. And we have Elon Musk selling and, just like a lot of just like bearish movement. It definitely creates like a snowball effect where it's like the moves end up, being like they end up being bigger than they otherwise normally would be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And Elon came out and sold some shares of Tesla. I know that was pretty huge as well. That hit the news obviously pretty crazy. What was interesting, Mike, is that news came out and Tesla's actually green following that, which is funny. But obviously that they report the selling after it's done. So keep that in mind. That's probably why Tesla popped up a little bit today. But nonetheless, that's been insane, Mike. I cannot believe he sold, what was it, $3.5 billion worth of Tesla stock again. It just seems like he doesn't stop. And I remember at one point he promised not to sell any more Tesla stock. And it just seems like he's losing the trust of a lot of people lately.
You know it. All right, Tom. So one stock I want to talk about for the next couple days is Enphase. So I've been watching this stock quite a bit over the past couple weeks. Enphase is just like really having a hard time at the resistance level that it's at. This like $340 level has been really tough for Enphase. It tried to touch it and break out of it yesterday, but it had a strong rejection to the downside. So I'm really eyeing Enphase for now a retest back to 300, which is a support level. So Enphase is definitely on my watch list to the downside going forward. And I think it'd be a pretty good opportunity for like a put play or bearish play. And hopefully we can retest 300.
Yeah, that's a huge level, Mike. I had my support just slightly under that, but I moved it up because that is actually huge. There's been a lot of huge candlesticks right there, bouncing right off of 300. So I like it, Mike. I think that could be a pretty good play down towards there. And who knows, if we drop below 300, I feel like it might even be able to go down a little bit more, especially when you look at that daily chart of Enphase, Mike. Man, this has been one of the better stocks this year, especially compared to the SPY and the market overall. So yeah, I could see it falling down a little bit more as well. I know we've been also talking about the banks actually going down quite a bit, a lot lately as well. And I figured I would mention JP Morgan one more time here because they actually fell and they're kind of straddling right around this big 130 support here. And towards the end of the day today, I actually noticed they had a bit of a bounce off of 130. So if they fall back below 130 tomorrow morning, I will be looking at JP Morgan back down. Now, whenever you look at it zoomed in, it looks pretty flat and choppy. But whenever you look at it on the daily chart, you can tell how JP Morgan had this huge explosion up, and it looks like we're finally starting to break some supports back down. So if we get back below 130, I will look at some puts again.
Sounds good. All right, another stock I'm watching is Amazon. So Amazon is at a key support level right around 86. It's right now it's around 88, but it's really close to that key support at $86 per share. I'm hoping it can hold this support level, but if it doesn't, it can definitely sell off in a big way. So for Amazon, it's kind of like a dual opportunity for me in this sense. If it looks like it's holding that $86 support, I'll definitely look at it for like a bullish play, kind of like a dip buy style trade. But at the same time, if we get selling pressure tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday, like we got today, it's also an opportunity to the downside if it breaks below that support.
Yeah, very well could be, and I really like that support as well. And I feel like it might even get a nice bounce back up. I know Amazon has been pretty rough lately. And I honestly today, Mike, with the way the market fell down so much and with how much volatility it fell with, I kind of felt like we were kind of like waiting all day long for a little bounce back up, but we didn't really get anything too crazy. So maybe that will maybe come in tomorrow morning or something like that. So definitely watch that support. My last play, Mike, is actually two stocks together. This is actually Netflix and Meta. Now, these plays, this is going to be more of like a longer term outlook here on these two stocks, at least maybe not like super long term, obviously, but maybe for like a month or 2 months. So I noticed that Netflix and Meta, they both had these huge gap downs back in like April, May, and just earlier this year in general. You can see the one on Netflix there Meta had one recently as well in October. So they both filled these gaps right back to the upside and pretty much perfectly bounced off of those resistance lines. And now they're starting to point back to the downside. I feel like that with the way the market's moving down and with the way a lot of these big tech stocks in the market, like Apple, Microsoft, and stocks like that, are starting to set up, I'm definitely going to keep my eyes on Netflix more specifically and Meta possibly to the downside, at least just for a couple weeks. With Netflix here, I'm watching a huge support around 290. If we break below that, I think it could be a pretty big opportunity tomorrow. Honestly, I would just use the low of day today, maybe around like 286.50, give or take a couple dollars on Netflix. You know, it's a huge stock.
All right, good stuff. Thanks for sharing those setups. But it is now time for the momentum plays. With the first one, we have Roblox to the downside.
Yeah, Roblox, that was insane. 15% to the downside. They had that terrible news come out. If they can break below $27, watch for that push back down.
Right, with the next one, we have Block also to the downside.
Yeah, Square, big pullback today. I was glad I got out of that play when I did today, Mike. Go ahead and make them break below 65.
And with the last one, we have Zoom, and we need both directions.
ZM, yeah, Zoom's actually on a pretty big support here, Mike. So if they break below $70, I'm going to look for a push down below that support. But if they're able to move up above 71, then I will look at calls. I think if they move above 71, we have a pretty good chance of at least touching maybe 72 tomorrow.
Sounds good. So we're watching Zoom for a potential day trade to the upside tomorrow, only if it breaks above the level Tom listed. And then we are also watching it for a potential day trade to the downside tomorrow, only if it breaks below the level Tom listed. And we are also watching the downside level on Square and Roblox as well. So make sure to keep those on your watch list. But it is now time for the big money trade of the day. We have $15 million coming into Pinterest. So basically, $15 million went into the Pinterest 25 strike call options for March 17th of 2023. And this play is a little bit tricky, to be honest with you. So some big money trades are easier to read than others. When they are tough to read, we're going to tell you. And this is one of those situations. So mainly the thing you need to know is that Pinterest has been, relatively flat over the past couple months, and $15 million was put into the 25 strike call options that expire on March 17th of 2023. We don't know if the big money is buying these call options or selling them. In other situations, we can have a higher degree of certainty of what the big money is likely doing. In this situation, it's a little bit harder to tell. In the event that the big money is buying these call options, they would want Pinterest to rise as much as possible. And if Pinterest pops up, they would make millions and millions and millions of dollars. At the same time, the big money can already have, millions of shares of Pinterest, and they might be selling these call options as what's called a covered call option. So that's a whole topic and a whole video for itself, but they could also be shorting these call options. So with this scenario, what I do find interesting is that I know there has been a lot of talk with a potential like TikTok ban lately. And the last time this happened, Pinterest did have a good move up. So maybe it's kind of like a play like that. We'll see.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, Mike, into those Pinterest calls. They expire in March there. So that's a lot of money, though. 15 million put into these at that 25 strike. I do like the strike that they use. I feel like it's a fairly decent level given the price that Pinterest is at right now. And if Pinterest does start to finally break out of maybe this trend or break out of this wedge a little bit back to the upside, I feel like that could maybe bring in a lot of volatility. So I like the setup, Mike. I think it's very interesting. And if we start to see a breakout, I think it could definitely be a pretty good play to go ahead and follow. So keep it on the watch list, guys. I will say, Mike, this one might take a little while to play out. We might end up, staying flat for a couple more months. That's why these guys have some time. But I feel like, come maybe the beginning of this year, maybe sometime around January or maybe the beginning of February, we might start to see Pinterest break out. And obviously, the overall market's going to play a factor too.
Yep. So we will see. Either way, it's a pretty significant trade. $15 million is definitely a sizable dollar amount. And it's definitely up there with some of the biggest big money trades we have covered. So either way, keep it on your radar. What can also always be done is like, if you just keep it on your watch list, to keep it on your radar for a couple weeks, and who knows, maybe in a week or two or a couple months, we see some big news with Pinterest, whether it be to the upside or the downside. As long as the big money is still holding their position, you can always jump in later and have a higher degree of certainty as the situation changes.
Yeah, 100%. Try to catch that momentum. You don't always have to enter when they enter. And, I know that a lot of times the smart money, they're buying obviously a lot of time and stuff like that. I know a lot of people don't like to hold things necessarily for that long. So for those momentum guys, that would definitely be a pretty good strategy there, Mike.
Sounds good. All right, well, Tom, for tomorrow, we have a lot of selling pressure. A lot of stocks are at key support levels. What else is on your mind?
Yeah, it's going to be a huge day overall. I did notice today, Mike, one weird thing was that the dollar had a humongous explosion this morning. I mean, heading into this morning, it actually tanked off in a big way. And then once the market started to open and we got that news coming in, obviously, from the retail sales and everything like that, the dollar totally reversed and flew up. I think this is going to be a pretty important thing to look at. And whenever I look at the dollar on the daily chart, it's down quite a bit from recent highs. I'm wondering if we're going to get maybe like a shorter term uptick here, maybe for a week or two, and it might kind of send the market down, especially with the SPY breaking out of these key channels and everything like that we've been talking about for the past couple of weeks. So I'll be honest, I'm kind of bearish right now. So I'm going to keep looking for that intraday volatility, and hopefully I continue to, maybe find some good place at the downside here if that's what the market gives us. And, I know a lot of people like to lean to the upside all the time, and, that's good. Statistically in history, there's a lot more upside potential than downside, but obviously you have to take the downside movement when it comes. And today there was definitely a lot of opportunity for that.
You know it. All right. Another thing is, if you guys like our videos, make sure to subscribe. When you subscribe, you'll see our videos recommended to you more often, and we post all the time. But I also want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, new to Mo in the Stocked Up Discord. You've been in the chat for 2.5 years now, and you're still active, and you're a great member of the chat. So huge shout out to you. Thank you so much for your activity. But Tom, like you said, you basically actually summarized everything going into tomorrow. Either way, I just want to emphasize again, we have a lot of stocks at key support levels, especially these big tech stocks. Amazon is one of the most notable, in my opinion, so it'll definitely be close on my watch list for tomorrow. But besides that, I think we should have a pretty exciting end to the week. Besides that, don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and let's end the week strong.